Hey guys, this is Ben from Practical Junk again. Today, I've got a little bit of an issue which I need to address. I'm not a young, sprightly little joker anymore, and I find it harder to lean down and crawl under tight places. So, this is something I wanted to do when I refurbished this coop. This is a completely, and I do mean refurbished coop. All right, I raised the door right here, stained it, cut the entire bottom of it out, like the bottom boards. I cut those boards out and put treated wood. Did a lot of work to this coop. It was in rough shape. I can't complain. I got it for free. You know, modified it for quail. And like on this side right down here, I got rid of the door on this end and I doubled my ramp up and made kind of a step going up. But there's one issue. You see how low this is? It's really hard. It's hard for me to crawl under that anymore. Oh, getting old sucks. So, I've been using my handy little tool on the ground over here behind me. You know, this is my bed turner, and it's also my egg collector, which unfortunately, if you're not patient, you can damage eggs with it. So it's like, what's my problem? I can't crawl under there. And what happens is these beautiful little birds have chosen to make an nesting area right back here in this corner. Yeah, right down in there. I mean, there's an egg right there. Right there. You can't hardly see it, but there's one down there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build a door here. I've got one up here to access the box. And I debated on building a door down here when I was remodeling. I was like, you know, I'm not gonna do that. Now I'm regretting it. So, we're gonna frame a door in. Now I've already started. I've measured from this point all the way over to this point. That's right at 37 inches perfect. Now I reframed this. I know it's really square, but the width is 37. I'm gonna cut the boards 36 3/4. What does that do? It gives you 1/8 of an inch on each side. If you've got any room for play, the door's gonna open and close. So you always wanna cut everything 1/4 inch short when you're doing some framing, especially when it's a door like this. Then I've measured the height. I'm gonna make that 1/4 inch shorter. We're gonna put some hinges, and then I'm gonna have the fun of taking this back apart because I've gotta take this center board out, which I know is in there really good. So I'm gonna saws all that out. And then I'm probably gonna use some new wire. I'm probably not gonna use this old wire. It's actually kind of cheap. Like, it's really cheap. We're gonna hinge it. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna make it where it folds down to the ground. That way I can reach in here and grab some eggs. Then there's also the other factor of I block this side off. And what does that do? I use underneath this box when I'm separating out my males. And I've been putting a divider on the other side, then pulling it, grabbing males. So this coop kind of serves a double purpose. And we got to make it more accessible. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go cut some wood up, get the basic frame done. I'm going to cut a little 45s to go in the corners to make sure it stays squared up. We're going to stain it up, and we're going to get us some more access. All right, so let's go over our measurements real quick. That way you guys can cut the stuff right the first time. All right, here's my width. Now, let's talk about your height. My height was 21 1/4. So you don't want to cut this board right here 21 1/4. You got to take this off. So what I did is I measured this, deducted it from 21 1/4, came up with exactly 18. So, and then what I'm going to do here, that way your height's right. So when these go between here, your height is going to be from the bottom of this to the top of this. Then we've got our corners right here. And what we're gonna do, I'm gonna stain all this before I put it together, but this right here is gonna sturdy the door up. If I'm gonna be in and out of this a lot, I wanna make sure that it's not gonna shift. Yes, you can put the chicken wire on it and it's not gonna move much, but you cut you a couple of 45s, it's gonna hold, and it's gonna hold that at a solid 90 degrees right here. So when you open and close it, there's not gonna be any give. And also, when I go to put wire on it, that wire is gonna strengthen it too, and it's gonna hold it steady. But these right here, if you don't have these blocks in here, this can shift around and it's gonna throw it at a square. And when you put your wire on it, it's gonna be at a square permanently, and it's not gonna fit in the doorway properly. So always cut you a couple of 45 blocks, put them in the corners. That way when you get your wire on it, you know it's gonna fit properly. So I'm gonna go get my stain and I'm gonna get these taken care of. All right, so what I did, I got everything cut. I picked this up in a bin for like $1. Great little investment. I was able to clean all the wood up, get the dirt and debris. Most of this is scraps. You know, I always hold on to my scraps. You'll never know what you need it for. All right, so got all the staining done. Voila. Really fast, huh? So, gotta let it dry. With stain, if you don't let it fully dry, especially with this kind of stain, it's more like a paint than it is really like a natural wood stain. Gotta let it dry good. Unfortunately, it's about 50 to 40 degrees out right now, and the sun is going down. So I'm gonna let this dry overnight, then we'll come back out tomorrow. We'll flip them over, and where I have it right here on the boards, it's gonna have some spots, so I'll probably hit it with a little bit more stain just on those edges. Let it dry for a couple hours, then we're gonna frame it up. All right, this is what happens when there's a lot of moisture and dew that runs at night. I have to bring projects inside in the morning and get the fireplace going. But it's finally dry. So now we got to build a box frame. A couple of tricks and a few things you might want to do while you're building or framing anything. Make sure you pre-drill the holes, especially when you're doing your 45s for your corner supports. If you do not pre-drill them, it's going to split this. I pre-drilled the boards here as well. That way when I was drilling it together, it wouldn't split the ends. Now, I also taken a little bit of Gorilla Glue. I get the clear because the brown Gorilla Glue expands as it dries and you'll have to scrape it off. But any glue or wood glue is going to work. This just kind of secures everything, makes it a little bit stronger. But I just take it, run kind of just a thin round circle around the edge, run my screws in, and it's going to be good to go. Something else you're watching me do as I'm framing this is I'm going corner to corner, and I'm checking right here. It's 42 and 3/16, and then right here it is exactly 42 and 3/16. Now what does that do? That's telling me that this is perfectly square. And what I did is when I put it together, I checked it, kind of pushed in the corners to square it up. And then when I put the first board or the corner here with these 45 just for supports, it actually squared everything up perfectly. So if you've got good clean cuts and you've got good 45s, it's going to make this job a lot easier. All right, so I've got everything unwrapped. I keep the wire. Comes in handy if you're making small cages, if you ever have to do any repairs. You'd be amazed what you can use this for. So, got my door, got my wire, and it's just about perfect. And I do mean perfect for this door. So all I'm gonna have to do is just measure it and cut one edge. Now when I'm doing this, a lot of times I usually have my grinder, but unfortunately due to weather, I'm doing this in my living room. Thank God the wife's not home. But when you're cutting the wire, the strands will run on the outside for the outside strands, and then lengthwise or widthwise, the strands are on the inside. So what I'll do is I'll take my cutters and I'll hold them at an angle. That way I'm cutting off at the angle of the outside wire, if that makes sense. So what it does is that'll trim this down smooth. Right in here, I've got a few sharp points. Right here, there's 2 or 3, which I'm gonna nick those off. But if you hold it at an angle, again, angle them this way, and you cut it, it'll cut that wire at an angle back, and it won't be as sharp. So, I'm gonna get some wire cut. We're gonna finish this door up, and we're gonna get some hardware cloth on it. All right, we've got everything wired up. Ran into a little bit of a hiccup. Right here, this piece of wire was missing. You know, the wire that was wrapped around holding this together. I used it to do a quick repair. I try to put the staples about every 4 inches, maybe 3 inches apart. That way no critters can get through, just depending on how well it is stretched. You'd be amazed what can fit through the edges if it's not tight and if you don't have those staples close enough. Animals will find a way to get in. So we've got it stretched. That's really tight. I mean, that's exactly how we wanted it. Now, hardware. I've got some old hinges. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put 3 on it. It is kind of a heavier door just because of the wood that I used. But we're gonna go ahead and get those started. And we've got the rest of the hardware in here we're gonna be using. Our door's completed. Now, we're gonna have to go outside, take off the old wire, get the center section out of the coop, and we've got to get this installed. Well, hardware's on. If you didn't notice in the video, I was flipping it up like this to hold it in place. What that does, this sets that just out the front. So when it opens and closes, it hinges out. That way it's not gonna be rubbing the top, because if you set these in too far, it's actually gonna raise this, because this is a little bit thick. It's right at about 3/16. So you wanna make sure that right here where the hinge sets into it and is past the face. So it'll open and close a lot easier. Well, let's get this done. All right, so what have we done? I've got my handy dandy quick divider set in here. We've got all the males and ladies moved over, and now we got to start cutting this end out. All right, so We've got the old screen out. I put a couple little pieces of blocks in here. What that's going to do, it's going to stop the door from pushing in. But when you're doing these Tractor Supply coops, if you notice here, they've got a real thin slit in here. The wire slides in there and they put nails through it. So you're gonna have to cut those out. I got a little damage here. I'll probably paint that up in those later. The screws for the center board, which I had redone this bottom, so I knew it was right here versus underneath. But if you're ever gonna redo this, they run their screws from underneath and the top of this other board. So it's not that bad to cut out. I wanted to save the wire for a possible another project, but now we're gonna get a door in here. Access door, mission accomplished. It's working great. I actually right now didn't think about this when I was building it, but I made a little divider in here so I can, you guessed it, this is going to be a temporary bachelor pad, and I can remove the divider here in the center, take the feeder and stuff out, and open it back up. These guys won't be in here but a few days, so multi-purpose, multi-function, and it's working beautifully.